Hello, community. My name's Nancy Shacker, and I'm with the Cumberland County Progressives Organization. The mission of Cumberland County Progressives is to promote economic, social, environmental justice, peace, and sustainability in North Carolina, to maximize the democratic process, advocate for today's most pressing issues, and to serve as a voice of conscience. We are nonpartisan and not under the direction of any political party, any religious or social entity. Our ultimate goal is to educate, bring unbiased information to the citizens of Cumberland County, and the means by which citizens can affect change.
Hello everyone, and thank you for coming out on this National Night Out Day. You could have spent it anywhere, but you spent it here with us, and we greatly appreciate it. So, my name is Roderick Lewis, Chair of the Cumberland County Progressives, and we'd like to thank our sponsors for this event tonight. And this is our second in our multiple listening tour. Our main objective is to create dialogue for the school systems to see how we can affect changes at the school system at large. And so when after this meeting's over with, grab someone, talk. Some people are running for school board here. If you can, grab them by the hand and say hello. So everyone that's running for the school board, raise your hand. All right, and everyone who's in the school board, also raise your hand. All right, so you see the people here, so grab them and talk to them. Our sponsors is the Cumberland County Progressives, and the Quaker House at Fayetteville, and the Stanley Cultural Foundation. Well, on that note, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, and we're going to begin. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Romain Stanley. I'll be your moderator for this evening. I want to also, again, thank you for coming out this evening. You could have been anywhere that you came here. And we're definitely talking about something that is very appealing and a necessity. Before we start, we're going to set some ground rules for everyone that already exists. But as we're going through the questions, the question and answer period, we want to make sure that we respect everyone and that we are not interrupting. Let some people finish. In that, also be sure and wary of time. So some people can be long-winded, like myself, and just be wary of time and let others get a chance to get input as well. Okay. So first, we'll just start from the farthest left to the end of the table. I wanted to give everyone a brief minute or so to introduce yourself. If you could just stand and let everyone know who you are. Check the mic.
My name is Joseph Sorce. I'm president of the Cumberland County Association of Educators, and I was vice president for 3 years, and this is my second year as president of the association. I also teach first grade at T.C. Barron Elementary School, and I've been in North Carolina about 12 years. Yes, I'm a northerner, so, but I love it here, and I won't go back up there because of the snow. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to answer any of your questions.
My name is Monique Jackson. I'm an assistant organizer with Democracy North Carolina. I'm also a mother of 3 children, whom are one in high school, 2 in elementary. Been in North Carolina for 12 years as well. I'm glad to be here and participate in this panel today.
Good evening. My name is Carmela McKeller Smith. I'm a candidate for Cumberland County School Board. My family, we moved here about 8 children represent sixth generation of Cumberland County. So my family's been here for a little bit. I'm running for school board because I'm really hoping to go and do what I can do to be a part of the changes that we need to see in our system. So I look forward to hearing from people and hearing their thoughts and what we can do.
I'm Rick Glazier, and I'm in my sixth term in the House of Representatives from Cumberland County. I teach as a visiting professor at Fayetteville State University in my 7th year, and also as an adjunct professor of law at Campbell University School of Law. And previous to that, I served 6 years on the Cumberland County School Board too, as its chair, along with Mr. Boos, who is here from the school board. And I'm married, I have 2 children, and both are graduates of the Cumberland County school system. My wife works at Methodist University as an administrator, and I'm glad to be here for the second time.
Good evening, my name is Renada. I'm an educator in Hope County Schools. I'm a 4th grade reading teacher. I've been an educator for 23 years now, and I'm also a graduate of Fayetteville State University, go Broncos. And I'm glad to be here, and my brother is Robert.
All right, thank you for all the panelists being here. And we'll get started with the questions. The first question, I'll just start at the top. And I'll aim this question towards everyone. Are our K through 12 schools really in crisis, or do we just need to think? I'm sorry. Are our K through 12 schools really in a crisis, or do we just think that way? If so, why? Don't everybody jump in one.
As an educator in Cumberland County, I can say that the Cumberland County schools are not broken. We've shown a lot of achievement, and our scores are up this year, and graduation rates are up. So we must be doing something right, and I think that you can be proud of the schools you have here in Cumberland County.
I agree, they're not in bad crisis. There's changes can be made as far as disciplinary problems in school and children learning. But as far as it being in crisis, my children attend J.W. Cook and Duncanburg High. They have a great principal. They're learning what they need to learn. I think Cumberland County schools are pretty good.
Crisis might not be the term that I use, but I think that what we saw last year when Common Core standards were implemented, and we showed up at 40% efficiency, I don't think that was a one-off. This year, proficiency, we've seen improvements, but we also did something at the state level that for me was a little scary, what we did below. So, yeah, we're doing really well this year. But at what price are we showing that we've improved efficiency? We lowered the bar. It was a very clear statement of, we didn't do well with this, so let's make it a little lower so that we can say we have greater efficiency. That's not what I want for my children.
All right, and that's all coming after that one. Just a reminder that I didn't, well, not a reminder, but there is no order. If anyone wants to chime in, you can just start speaking. If you want to raise your hand, just respectfully. On to the next question, though. We all know that our school system is lacking funds. Every school system is lacking funds. How do we improve our school system without any more money? Without any more resources in there?
Well, I'll answer answer it in a couple of ways. I mean, I think the public schools are not sustainable at the level that Carmela's talking about, or that we want, without additional resources. And I say that coming out of a budget that has put us now what I suspect will be 48th in the country in per pupil expenditures. And although resources are not everything, there comes a point in time at which you have to be competitive. And whether it's salary, because it's hiring the best people and the best teachers possible, and the best leaders and administrative leaders possible, is crucial in any profession. We've just come out with a budget that paraded itself as having a great teacher salary increase. And I commend the majority in the legislature for finding some fund to do what should have been done a long time ago. But before we pat ourselves in the back as a society, let's remember that the new plan comes out that starts a teacher at $33,000 to go to $35,000 in 2 years in order to compete with Tennessee and Virginia and South Carolina, which already are starting above that. So what problem exactly are we solving there? And it caps a teacher at the end after 30 years at $50,000. So we are going to pay, under this great new salary plan, a teacher $50,000 after 30 years, which is precisely the starting salary in year one in Houston. Now, if we think we're going to be competitive at that rate, that's a mistaken theory. If we think we're going to be competitive when we roll back master's pay and doctorate pay for teachers and end it, that's just not going to happen. When we eliminate incentives for teachers or great students to go into teaching, like the Teaching Fellows Program, that's not going to happen. And so while there's a lot of issues to talk about tonight, when you're 48th in the country in per pupil expenditure and your teacher pay plan, even with the increase, is relatively non-competitive, at some point resources matter. I actually think the Cumberland County schools have done the most with the least for a very long period of time, particularly given resources that are available, for example, in Wake County and Mecklenburg in the tax base. So if we're talking about that, I think that there's a limit to how far you can extend resources. The last point I'll make, and then I'll be quiet on this, is when we were in recession in 2009 and 10 and major cutbacks occurred because of the billions of dollars we were behind and lost revenue, there were some fairly significant cuts there. They were done with the idea that systems can do this for a year or two. We all make sacrifices for a year or two. But now those have become part and parcel to the continuing budget. And it's no longer a year or two, it's 5 years into it, and we're not in recession anymore. And we're still seeing and dramatically seeing the cuts at local school level, and that is not sustainable.
Okay, thank you. And that's all the time we have on that question. Rolling right into the next question, though, I'm going to give this to Ms. Lewis. As an educator, what resources do teachers need in order to prepare the school system for pretty much going off of the last question?
Money. We have a lot of state mandated, county mandated programs that are not supported fiscally, such as Reading 3D, which is a reading assessment program for elementary age students. And a lot of times teachers have to reach into their own pockets to purchase the books that are needed to assess students. Common Core, I'm an advocate of Common Core. I really like the program. I think if we give it a chance, it could work, especially if we have it implemented at the lower grades, and we'll see the results of it as students progress through the system. However, with limited textbooks or no textbooks at all, a lot of times you're making copies, and then you're limited on the paper that you receive, the ink that you receive, or no ink. And a lot of times teachers are paid to have copies made. So we're just limited with the resources that we need to fund the programs that are mandated by the state and to which we are held accountable for implementing.
Does anyone else want to add to it? Okay. Next question, and this will go off Mrs. Lewis's answer. Is the technology such as 3D and other things, computers and tablets and such, is that technology in our K-12 schools helping or hurting our children's education?
I would say that it's helping our child's education because they have to be 21st century ready when they get out of school to use that technology. So we've got children in kindergarten and first grade using iPads already and using laptops and learning how to communicate and develop stories, writing on the laptop, writing little stories and programs, and even designing their own programs themselves. So in the upper grade. So I think technology is helping our children in school.
I would agree, although I think it's also important to, from my perspective, that we create the use of that in training of teachers and their integration of it. The technology alone, I think, doesn't get us there, but creating professional development monies and funds to get teachers to be able to use it creatively. But just as an anecdote, at the end of May, I was asked to do some grading of student projects at E. Smith and had a lot of fun, and each of the students there had to do a work of literature and then do, aside from a 10-minute report, they had to do a 10-minute or X number of page report, they had to do a 10-minute presentation. And I'm still used to things like thinking PowerPoint is okay. We are way past PowerPoint and, in presentations, and all of them were able to use Prezi to do their presentations, and it was remarkable what students who apply themselves are able to do and what's being used in the schools, and that was every student. We had EC kids doing those presentations, we had AG kids doing those presentations, and that's what you want. So that was a case of the school really integrating the use of the technology in learning and in students being able to deliver a product, which I thought was a very good use.
Okay. Do you have something? I'll let you know.
Yes, I agree with everything that has been said, but I have some grievance with computer-based programs used in place of teaching, such as Accelerated Reader and Fast Forward. These are reading-based programs that have claims of increasing reading comprehension skills. I think Cumberland County Schools is doing away with Accelerated Reader. We still have it in Hope County, in some schools in Hope County, and we have Fast Forward. A lot of times these kids are pulled out of class, and it's class time, to go to these reading-based programs, which really do not increase their reading comprehension skills nor their phonetic analysis skills, which it costs the county a great deal of money, but they still seem to think this is the way to go.
Thank you. Change gears. In your view, are charter schools really incubators of innovation or a way to disrupt our traditional public schools?
Well, I would argue that they can be either, depending on how the charter applies and how the local system works. I think there's some really excellent charters in the state, and that are doing what they were set out to do as really thematic charters of innovation and creativity. And if that's what charters are supposed to be, they're doing a pretty good job. I don't know that the sharing has been all that great, but I think they create some real choice capacity that might not otherwise exist. That having been said, the path we are on in the state is a very different one than the charters I'm talking about. And anybody who followed the legislature this term, you saw among two provisions. One was a provision that created two virtual charters in the state, which have been uniformly disastrous everywhere they have been, sued in many places where they have been, and we didn't even follow the recommendations of the Republican-led State Board of Education that said we need capacity to really work on curriculum, on credentialing, on supervision. You won't find that. Almost none of their recommendations were taken, and we have pretty much carte blanche issued an RFP for 2 virtual schools for up to 1,700 students with almost no supervision. The second thing is, we are engaged in a difference between, I think, what charters are by people in the community, that really have a vested interest in making that charter succeed for their community, and educational management organizations. And there is a real fear I have about the EMOs, highlighted this year by a bill the governor is deciding whether to veto, which is that we're going to allow and make transparent teacher salaries at charters, but we're not going to make any employee or administrator salary transparent, because what we now have allowed is that EMOs can pick who sits on the charter board, and they may sit on the charter board, and the charter board gets to designate any employee of the charter school as either an employee of the charter school for which their salary is transparent, or an employee of the EMO instead, for which they can hide their salary. Now, that to me is just fundamentally wrong. And it signifies, I think, the power of less and less accountability of charters, more and more outside management, and that is all about profit. That is not about educational attainment. And that scares me about a lot of charters, because there are good ones, but we may be heading rapidly on a course of designating a whole lot of folks and giving them charters when we're going to regret it later.
Thank you. Next question, and this question we want Ms. Jackson to begin, if possible. Do parents have the skills to help their children with homework, or should they set high standards for their children and get out of their way? Meaning, is there a problem with, is there an issue with parents being able to teach at home, or should we consider that parents may not be able to teach at home?
Well, like myself, I'm educated enough to teach my children, but I have friends that don't have GED. For them to sit down and help their child with some algebra, it's not happening, because they don't know it themselves. So I think that depends on the circumstances of the family, if they can help their child or not. Sometimes the parent needs to help themselves first, educate themselves.
I think parents vary, like you said. I think, you're going to have various backgrounds and being able to deal with homework. But I think the schools this might be an area where we can do a little better, getting parents involved, getting them in and showing them some of the things we're doing in the schools, and maybe educating the parents. And even if we have to go to a social event with them and talk to them about things we're doing in school, so they can help their children with homework. And possibly we're maybe helping them be a little more educated about things too, than what we're doing at school.
This is a question that I thought quite a bit about, because one of my concerns as a parent was not necessarily having the skills, but having the tools to help my child. And what I found as we started changing curriculum is that I was out at sea. The child, we all know and expect the children to have a higher standard of learning than the parent. That's typically the case. My mother wasn't really able to help me with my math, and because it was a math that she wasn't used to. And now we see a different kind of math. But what hurts is when you don't have the tools. When my child comes home and says, "Mom, this science I'm not quite sure about, and I don't have a textbook, I don't have an ebook, I don't have a resource to be able to go to help my child." So I don't think that it's about the skills to help your child. I think it's about the tools to help your child.
All right. Next question. In North Carolina, do we need longer school calendar years, or would a longer calendar year disrupt a student's creativity?
Well, when I first got on the school board, and Michael might remember this, we had a big debate about schedules. And then some of our schools were 4x4, and some of our schools were 7-period day, and some of them were something that I don't recall, but I remember not working. AB. And everybody had their turf, and everybody liked their schedule. And there was a move towards 4x4, which I fought pretty fiercely as a parent and as a school board member. And we ended up giving each high school their choice and making the community vote on it, which actually I think was one of the smarter things we did, because then the community vested in whatever the schedule was. And so I'm not, although I'm still not a huge 4x4 fan, I think hybrid 4x4 can work. But I do think each community can adjust in that way. What I don't think is fair is on calendar, the state coming in, and for reasons totally unrelated to educational merit and totally because of economic and tourism reasons, telling school systems that they cannot start before August 25th, which essentially, because of the way the calendar is, means almost nobody is able to get first semester testing done before Christmas, which is ridiculous as an educational issue. And we talk about local control, and then we turn around and take it from communities as a legislature, not on educational merit. I think that's fundamentally wrong. It's been that way now for 8 years, I think. We have the votes to reverse it, but leadership, both Democratic leadership with me, when Senator Rand and Senator Bass and I were in control, and more Senator Bass and I, or under the Republican leadership the last 4 years with Senator Herbert. They won't allow it to be voted on, and I think that's wrong. I don't think that, again, one schedule fits all, and I think there's some great reasons to be having, in many respects, a longer schedule, to have more days in the school year, but we also have to be prepared to pay. But when our kids are facing European competition, for example, Asian competition, where the normal school year is 200 to 220 days, and we're at 180, and you compound that times 12, then our kids are coming up a year and a half short. And I think at some point that's fundamentally unfair to competition, competitive capacity of our children.
Thank you. Is high stakes testing the best way to measure learning, or is it a waste of resources and time?
Well, I had a little experience with that this year. My son actually didn't do well all year, struggled with his grades. If it wasn't for that end of the year testing, he wouldn't be able to pass on his grade. And that, once he took that test and showed that he knew the work, he was able to go to the next grade. He passed those tests, he was able to go forward. So, to me, that testing is pretty good. To me, testing is okay. It shows you what the child has learned and what they're capable of.
I think what bothers me as an educator is, I would say that it's not the high stakes. I understand the end of grade testing, but what bothers educators, teachers most is doing so much of it. Right now, I'm benchmarking my first graders, and I've been at this for 2 weeks, benchmarking them. And then I'll benchmark them, I'll progress monitor them, they have to come back, and I monitor them again with more tests. And then by the middle of the year, I'll do another benchmark. And it just seems like there's a lot of testing going on. And gosh, we're thinking, when can we teach? We're testing all the time. But I understand the high stakes, but it's what it's used for, to me, is more important.
And there's so much pressure placed upon educators as well as administrators to meet whatever criteria is set, or whatever expected growth there is for your subgroups. A lot of times you find yourself teaching to the test. You don't have time to teach. You're teaching to pass the test. We have Standard 6, which is now in our evaluations, the EVOS system, and got an amen over here. And it's a lot of pressure. You know, if you don't have a certain amount of test scores, you're called in as a grade level. You may be called in individually to the principal's office to find out what's the problem. You know, you're teaching to the best of your ability, but all students, whether you're ELL, English language learners, your EC students, exceptional children students, they're still held to the same accountability. They still need to pass the same test. And to me, that's not fair. And sometimes you are given the EC cluster, which means you're given the majority of the EC students. And often, not all the time, but often, with EC students come with behavior problems. So not only do you have to, and as soon as we get to school, we start school like August 25th, around October, we have our first benchmark. And then for my colleague down here, grades K2, they're doing reading progress. K3, we do it in Hope County for reading progress. So your testing is day one, the window is open for testing. So you're testing as soon as kids walk in the door. For grade 3, they have a reading assessment they have to take. And so you're constantly testing, no time for teaching, and you're held accountable for all learners to achieve the same thing on all the tests. It is a lot of pressure. And you're not teaching. You're teaching professional test takers.
2 points on the testing, I think, that I'll talk about from this session. One, and I think, I don't remember if it was Carmela or Renada, but talked about Common Core. I also believe in Common Core, and was a big proponent. Unfortunately, the state reversed course, at least in title this year. We don't know what it will mean eventually. But one of the reasons, among many, including the increased rigor of it, was because it was moving us from summative assessments to formative ones, and to be using them as a way that good teachers have always used them to assess children and to diagnostically improve. And I agree that should occur. But a bad way with testing was a provision that did get a lot of play, but I argued last week pretty heavily on the floor as one of the many reasons I voted against the budget, and every other Democrat in the House did as well, along with 4 Republicans, is read to achieve. And so for those who don't know, that affects third graders dominantly. And a good part of the law that was put in last year was that we want children to read at grade level by the time they're out of third grade. And if they don't, we're going to provide resources and camps for them to do that. The bad part is all of the detail. And so if you had a third grade child last year, you were probably ready to pull every hair out you had on your head, and I'm sure every school board member was ready to do it to every legislator. And so in order to, among other ways, to pass the proficiency level and allow your child to move on from third grade, it became clear that there had to be a series of 12, I think that's right, 12 standards set and passed, and your child had to pass 36 tests, 3 per standard, in order to be rated proficient and move on. Now, and no single test was allowed to encompass more than 1 standard, which is silly to begin with. Secondly, we put in amendments this year to try to change that so that if a child scored a 90 on the first assessment on that standard, they didn't have to take the next 2 tests. That was a pretty good theory that they passed it. We actually tried it at 80, and they said, no, a kid could maybe, sort of luck out and get an 80. And I said, well, all right, so move it to 90. Or how about reducing it from 3 tests to 2? If they score 80, 2 tests. If they score 90, 1 test. Oh, no. The House passed those changes, and the Senate took them out of the budget, and the leadership, when they came up with the final budget, kept in all 36 tests. Now, that is just stupid. That is not helping children. And what about the kid who a teacher says, they're not going to pass this. All you're doing is making them fail 36 times. So we know they need to go to camp. Let's get past the first couple, and let's move to help them. How is it helping them to have them keep failing a test? And that, we had that in there. They took that out. We had parents ought to get the tools within 30 days of the start of school of what was going to be the testing regime, what their options were. That came out. So they could give this information to parents on February 1st if the school system wanted to. I think that is testing at its worst.
Thank you. And the next question, how can we maintain smaller classes in North Carolina?
Increase the number of teachers, number of teachers, teacher ratio per student.
So then I'll move on to the next question. Should teacher assistants be in every class that exceeds 18 students?
Yes.
Why?
Teacher assistants sometimes are viewed as clerical workers, secretaries, but TAs are very valuable to the learning process in the classroom. Oftentimes, teachers do not have the time to sit with the child and needs that one-on-one attention when they have such a diverse group of learners in the classroom. The TA has received training where they can assist a small group of students or assist a child one-on-one to help with some type of intervention skills that they need to receive achievement at that level or in that subject matter. So TAs are greatly needed. I think they're needed for grades K through 3, and they should be, schools should be given the funds to hire the TAs. The budget says that TAs, we will not be losing TAs, but still it does not equate to the budget we had last year. So somebody's going to lose their job. And I really value TAs and appreciate their help and support in the classroom.
I don't think the size matters. The class size matters. I think the teacher assistants can help a class of 12 students or 10 students because they're so needy. They need the help. And sometimes I've had teacher assistants who have been so good with children that they may relate to them better than they do to me in a different way. And you know, we're all educators in that building. The custodian, cafeteria workers, those children that come in contact with them every day, and they're all needed. Those are the valuable resources that we need every day.
The state budget that just passed cut $20 million from local school systems in teachers or TAs. We gave them the flexibility to choose their poison. They can choose which they want to cut. And $44 million next year. That's on top of the $500 million of the last 4.5 years that next year. You don't fund personnel in a stable system by using non-recurring funds or lottery funds to fund your personnel. And that's what this budget essentially did, and that is just fundamentally wrong.
Thank you. Next question. With the lack of resources, how can we make our, I don't want to say bad, but bad teachers good and good teachers bad?
I guess because just that question for me. I don't know that we look at it and say, how do we make a bad teacher better? If they're a bad teacher, we need to determine why we consider them to be a bad teacher, because maybe we need to redirect their energies and career path. But when you're looking at this, there are things that we have to invest in money. And some of it, I know that money changes everything. But at some place, we have to recognize that we don't have it. And so, what are we going to do in the meantime? In the meantime, we might want to consider how we reuse some of the administrative resources that we have in Cumberland County School System. We have a lot of people that are instructional coaches, that are administrators, internal training. We have teachers in our system that have taught in the school system for 20, 30 years. You know, in private industry, there's a concept that's often used, this train to train. We need to have people that are experts, subject matter experts within our system, using that capacity to do more. I'm often surprised when I see hiring of people in certain kinds of capacities, when I look and see, wow, not being used to mentor, train other teachers so that we can somehow leverage that knowledge, transition that knowledge. If you know that this teacher is going to be there and they don't have what they need to have, let's figure it out. I think that's a management issue. And if we have principals at schools and we say, okay, half of those teachers are bad teachers, then that's not the teachers, that's the administration.
I completely agree with that. I think administration has a lot to do with how successful teachers are, especially young teachers coming into the profession. They need all the help they can get. And if we're not giving it to them, then they will become bad teachers. So we really need to help those people and mentor. When we're talking about mentoring children, we do it a lot. We need it, or we have some mentoring programs, and I can't say we don't have any, but we do have some teacher mentoring programs. But they're far and few in between. I know a new teacher in my school, she has a mentor, but she comes in maybe once in a while. I only see her maybe 3 times a year. That's not enough. We need some people to help each other out to get especially those young teachers who need the help to get off to a good career. And if they're not functioning, then let's find out why.
I know a lot of people really want to get rid of teacher tenure, to get rid of bad teachers. But it doesn't matter if a teacher is beginning teacher or career status, veteran teacher. Once again, there are steps in place that an administrator can use to get rid of a quote-unquote bad teacher. There's action plans, there's utilizations of instructional coaches, professional development. So the idea of those that are on tenure are bad teachers sitting at their desk collecting a fat check is totally ludicrous to me. When there are steps in place for teachers who are not qualified or qualified, there are steps in place to, like Ms. Carmela said, find another career to redirect their path.
Thank you. Next question. How can we empower parents to get involved with public schools, especially local public schools?
Well, the parent has to want to be involved too. Like at JWCOON, they have all kind of activities all through the year, all week. It's parent-child activities. Once you get there, you can, the parents might go here and have their own activities. It might be dance or reading. It's all kind of stuff. The children can go off to another location in the building. They have activities. You come back together. Now you're doing family activities. That helps. It helps me stay involved. I'm there all year long. Likewise, other parents, mostly everybody out in my community. Just have to offer activities and programs for the parents to come out. They'll come out. They will come out.
And I'd like to join you. That's my passion topic. There's a woman sitting in the back there that shared some information with Nancy Shacker. It's something that stays with me. She said that it's not, studies have come to show that it's not about parental involvement as much as it's about parents teaching their children the value of an education. And the reason that, I was very blessed and fortunate to be able to be home with my children for as much time. I don't disagree, but I see the value in that. And it was hard for me, and I like to see parents involved. But what I remember was that my mother was never at my school. My mother was working every day. If my mother was at my school, it was a problem. So yes, we need to have parents showing their children that there's value to this education and instilling in them a value for this. Because you know what? Most of us just can't be there. So we have to figure, and you know what? Even the ones that can be there, after sitting on PTA for 3 years, school improvement team, volunteering in the school, I can tell you, parents don't show up. You know, so if we're waiting on parental involvement to create a better system, good luck with it. But I think we have to look at instilling those value systems in the children and say, this is important, this is critical, we've got to make this happen.
Thank you. When we get to this part with audience participation, then I want to add something.
We'll keep that question in mind. Next question. Regardless of resources, should North Carolina be considering free breakfast for all students?
Yes. If a child is hungry, they're not hungry. And a lot of, depending on the social economic status of the community, the family, sometimes food is not there. And kids depend on that meal in the morning. They look forward to it, they know it's there. And I can't teach a child is hungry. Your belly's grumbling, your mind's not working.
And this one's so fast. Final question. How can we make schools more transparent without hurting our teachers?
I don't understand that question. The schools are transparent. I feel that they are. The data is available. You want to find out the ranking of your child's school, individual school, the district, all that data is there, the test results. And I think that data is helpful. It's not harmful at all. It should be transparent, just like the White House should be.
Okay. And thank you for all of your answers, Ben. Appreciate them. At this moment, we're going to open it up to a question and answer from the audience. So at this point, though, I will tell you that we want to keep this very brief. Questions we're going to give a question, and then we're going to give the opportunity for the panelists to answer. And then from that, then we're not going to engage back and forth with the panelists on particular. So ask a question and let it go. So put as much of your question as possible. So we'll go with you first. Did you state your name and?
My name is Queen Jagrappin Reed. Concerned about the impact or interaction of immigration reform on the education system. I was a little late, so you may have addressed that up front, but immigration is not going away. And I'm real concerned, and I watched all the budget deliberations and everything that went on in the short session. To me, immigration reform was not adequately addressed. And it's going to impact those children coming into our system. It's not going away. I'll put it that way. So what is going on in terms of the systems integrating?
I'll answer since you identified the short session. There was obviously immigration reform is a federal issue, and sadly, there continues to be no compromise in sight. Clearly not going to happen before a new November election, despite, I think, the president's wish and despite some in the Republican Party's wish, but too many opposed. So it's not happening there. There was no attempt to gain immigration reform on a state scale in the short session. So you're right about that. And I've argued since 2005, having authored the North Carolina DREAM Act back then, that regardless of your view of border security, regardless of your view of what we do about the 13 million or so undocumented immigrants that are in the United States, as to their parents, the children are the innocent victims here. They're here, many of them have been here for almost all of their lives, And we pay, several $100,000 for them to get through K-12. And then we say, oh, but we're sorry, you don't get to go on to college unless you have $30,000 out of state money, and maybe not then. And we may deport you, by the way, if you apply. And all of which I think is a moral and educational nightmare. And we're wasting a lot of talent. It is come back to be re-highlighted by the tragedy that's happening with all of the children crossing in the last several months due to extraordinary threats to their families, to themselves, and gang violence in their countries. I saw the governor on television about 2 hours ago raising some legitimate concerns about where the federal government is on this, but raising all the concerns about except one, and that is how do we care for these children as children? What's our moral obligation as a human race to each other? And instead, we're gearing people up and ginning people up to be scared of these children as if they're bringing the Ebola virus with them or something. And I think that's wrong. I mean, I think that there are legitimate questions to answer, but there are also children. And somewhere we've got to differentiate between the issues with regard to 5 and 10-year-old kids and how we feel about the issue of immigration at borders for their parents. And we seem to be unable to do that as a political system.
Thank you. I'm going to add another piece, and I'm glad that you addressed education when you said black. So another thing that we want to make sure that we do is if we can, this is a public education forum. We're trying to address issues that deal with public education. So if you can make sure that it's a question as well, and that it addresses public education, so that we use our entire panel, so we're not wearing a Representative Glazier down. So I think Ms. Morris' hand was up, and then I'll go to you. And, sorry.
Good evening, how are you? I have a question, probably from Mr. Sorce, Ms. Lewis. As we look at our teachers, and I speak with a lot of teachers in our community, one of the biggest concerns that they have is behaviors. Now, we talk about training the teacher, mentoring the teacher, and academics. My question is, what do you think should be done to educate our teachers on how to handle behaviors? Because we have teachers who are not parents, who are not old enough to be parents, but they're welcoming children who have behavioral problems. So what are your thoughts on what we should do to address behaviors? Because that's a big issue in our school systems.
I think, for one thing, there needs to be diversity training. What is acceptable in one culture may not be acceptable in another culture. And a lot of times, behavioral referrals are due to the lack of knowing a person's culture. And I think once an educator is aware of a person's culture and what is acceptable in that culture and what is not, then they can come to an understanding of how to manage that in the classroom. A lot of times students are referred to the guidance counselor or to the student assistant team for behavioral problems. And for one teacher, maybe from that culture, they don't see it as a behavior problem per se. Whereas from another culture, they may see it as that. So I think it begins with diversity training. I think a lot of that ties into that. Not only diversity training, but just basic skills on how to handle classroom management. A lot of times, especially with your newer teachers coming in, and they don't know how to handle classroom management. Unfortunately, that is not taught at the college level. You have a lot of methodology courses, you do your student teaching, and then you're just kind of just thrown out here. And you're not given any training on how to effectively handle and manage classroom behavior.
More professional development and sensitivity training to different cultures is essential for especially the teachers. I was just looking at this new teacher orientation on August 12th to the 14th, and I was looking for that, but I didn't see that here. So that's where it needs to be, new teacher orientation. So yes, and I think for some of us, veteran teachers, we need a refresher in classroom management once in a while because things change over years. Kids' behavior changes and attitudes about education have changed. So yes, we need professional development for not only just the new teachers, but we need to get veterans back in there and learn about classroom management and some of the other issues that are coming forward.
Thank you. Ms. Shacker.
Nancy Shacker and Carmela, thanks for acknowledging that. It has been found, as you said, that parental involvement is not really necessary, but parents at home have to value education. And if the parents value education, whether they come to the school or not, those children will value education. That leads to another issue of parents who don't value education. We have many parents who have attitudes about teachers because they had bad experiences themselves. And you talk about a 30-year-old or someone, young people who have children, they have not had positive experiences with educators, principals, teachers, and so on. And now, how do you get past that? And one of the things we found, I taught and was a district administrator in the school system. I don't want to brag on it, but it's the second best school system in the country. And one of the things we found in the district that I worked in, was that having an opportunity for parents to return to school was one of the best, most positive ways that we got parents to begin to value completing their GED, and also after that being able to take courses at the local community college. That also opened the door for them to be paraprofessionals in the school system. So they began to value education. That is one way of reaching parents. I wanted to also say, in regard to, I don't call it diversity training. I think we need anti-racism training. I'm very clear about that in our school system and in our country. Because one of the issues that is very disturbing to me, and it should be to everyone in the room, and I don't know what's happening in Cumberland County with it, but it is the number of particularly African American boys and other boys of color who are being suspended continuously and being pushed into the prison pipeline. And that, to me, I don't know whether that's built into the plan at this point, but I think it's something, and I direct my questions to the panelists for your ideas or thoughts on that.
The President and the Office of Civil Rights, and now that we have a Civil Rights Commissioner for Fayetteville, call Justice Timmons Goodson, who does this, but put out guidance at the beginning of the last academic year about the issue of disproportionality in classroom disciplinary issues. And so I filed a bill to try to simply ask that school systems this year abide by the compliance by simply gaining the data to see what the disproportionality, if there is any, in a district, and have the district then they not even turn it into the state, that they simply had to talk as a school board in their community about what the data showed by school, so that it wasn't threatening to the district that it would be used against them, but it was informative for a district to be at least look at what was happening in schools by race and ethnicity. And the majority would not let that bill be heard or that provision be put in the budget to even collect it out.
Can I piggyback on that? Rick,
Yes, you can.
2009, when we talked about that, there was going to be a study here in Fayetteville. There was somebody who worked at Adelaide. This young lady, she's going to do study. She had got grant money to look at our suspension rates in Cumberland County. And the reason why I know that, I was going to work with her on that program. It got declined by a school board here. They did not want to study to look at our suspension rates here in Cumberland County to see what it looked like. Were you aware of that or anything of that nature?
I may have been back in 2009, and long after I got off the board, but I have never. I mean, it just strikes me that playing ostrich to a problem, and you don't even know if you have a problem if you're not willing to collect the data. And so whether that's a local school board or the state, I mean, clearly national data shows disproportionality issues. And we may be better than we think, we may be worse than we think, but we shouldn't know. We can't know what we think without collecting the data, and we have just been very resistant as a state, and apparently, to some degree, there must have been some issues at the LEA level. Others may end up changing that. I just don't see why we refuse to know.
Can I speak on that before we go on? One of the things today, I was at the committee meetings for the school, and we talked about this testing, and I just recognize social promotion when I see social promotion, and this third grade Read to Achieve component, and there was a 3-week camp where there were like 600 children that failed the third grade reading test. And so they got this 3-week intensive camp, and out of those 600, give or take, 24% were then able to pass the test. That scares me. That scares me. And you know what? People seem to call it a myth that children that can't read in the first and second and third grade aren't fast-tracked for prison. And so, never mind behavioral problems in school, because they're heading to prison if we don't figure out how to make this better. You know, we're looking at this and I'm saying, what do we do? So what happens? The other thing is that we've said this, but we didn't figure out what we're going to do with these kids. Okay, that's the bottom line. It's like, okay, well, if they fail, maybe we'll hold them back, maybe we'll put them in transition classes. We don't even know what to do with these babies that are sitting there and they can't read. And I sat there and I was amazed. So, behavioral issues, yes. But the bottom line is that we're seeing the numbers of children coming out heading to prison increasing. And most of them look like Monique.
And I would like to follow that just along the same line. I mean, two things that I would say. One is that there are large issues about what to do about those kids, because retention itself is not a good answer either. There are large numbers of kids who are retained, and that really does send them to the prison right away. So it really has to be a plan for these kids. But one of the hands-tied rules we put in the budget, the majority, I don't say we, and I didn't vote. But put in the budget, the Read to Achieve program, attempting to help kids. And I think that was actually, a good intent to get at really deep reading literacy issues. But then you hamstring it by saying the $26 million that you're putting in may only be used for certain activities, and most of it is these what was originally 6-week camps, now 3-week camps. Well, if a kid hasn't learned to read all year, do you really think many are going to learn in 3 weeks over the summer? The idea should be to give the school systems the capacity to use that money all year long to remediate. Well, we don't let them use it. So that's just, to me, is fundamentally, again, Raleigh is not the font of all knowledge, and in this case, not much knowledge. And it really, I think that our system, years and years ago, to the credit of the school system and the school board members, then and now, on this issue, long ago got rid of summer school, because we realized that was a problem and front-loaded the money from the local system into ongoing remediation from the beginning. And now the remediation, as that remediation money then dried up when the recession hit and school systems had to cut back and cut back and cut back because the federal money was going, the state money was going, we reverted back, and when this remediation summer money got put in, it is the only significant money that the state gives now, and tell them it has to be in the summer. And I might add a second point about it all. We also cut back and took $9 million out of the at-risk money from the budget this year. $5 million of it to go to an unnamed after-school program that will have no quality control on it, and I can only imagine what's going to happen with that $5 million. what could have been used by school districts to remediate children need.
I'd like to say something about remediation. Many of the principals have money in the elementary schools for remediation. I don't know where they get it from, but they have some money. But they aim it at grades 3, 4, and 5. It needs to be K, 1, and 2. Then by the time they get to 3, 4, and 5, maybe they don't need that. And they're ready to go for the testing or whatever happens. And then you get the smaller group. I think we need to lower the level where we do some remediation and tutoring. And that we don't have any tutoring for K, 1, or 7th grade.
Thank you. We're going to go with Ms. Blue. Your question?
Yes, I was talking to a teacher and I need some answers. How much time does a teacher use for clerical work? Grading papers and things out of their time? Well, she suggested that the teachers teach and there should be a clerical person that takes care of grading papers and things like that.
I'd rather
Could I
take
get your
papers
ideas?
myself as a teacher because I want to see how the children are doing. I don't want someone else grading papers. But as far as clerical work, it is somewhat overbearing for teachers. My lesson plans are sometimes 8 pages for one subject. And I teach English, math, science, and social studies. So the lesson plans for us are sometimes, I don't know who they're for, but they're not, sometimes they don't seem to work as far as, it just seems like it's a lot of clerical work for us. And there is always more paperwork, but it's gone digital now. So now we do things on our iPads and laptops and so forth.
So you got a question?
Miles McKeller Smith. This was directed towards Representative Glazier, but anybody can answer this. You mentioned that the 4x4 schedule, you just don't really like it too much. And I'll just say this flat out. It's not set up for AP students, people taking advanced placement tests to get ready and then take the test and then do well. Because if I'm taking, say, 2 AP exams, take two AP classes in the fall, I have all of a sudden a 4-month break where I'm not even touching that subject. In the spring, I don't even really get the full semester to learn it. I only get 2 or 3 months and then I have to take a test. You touched on the 4x4 hybrid. How exactly, do you think that'll be able to help that? Because I know after 2 years of college, I've met people who go by the 8-period system where they had the entire year, they had 8 class periods, take the same class through the entire school year. And though it's sad to say, but they're outperforming us by a lot because it becomes a mad race to get the right score when the ultimate goal of AP tests are to get you ready for college. So how do you think?
Well, first, Mr. Boos and I would both wish you were here when we were doing battle on that subject many years ago. You eloquently presented, but I do think I don't think any school any longer runs pure 4x4. Pure 4x4 doesn't work for AP kids, doesn't work for art, band student kids, doesn't work for a lot of kids. It can work for some. So I think most principals hybrid it. They create 0 periods. They work with after-school issues. They work on a really defined rescheduling to create better sequencing. So when I say hybrid, there's lots of hybrids out there, and I think you have to hybrid it to really make it work for a really balanced school. I continue to think that, again, if a community, a system, a principal, and by the way, Bob Barnes, who was back then the principal of South, he did one of the best jobs of it. But I think if you invest as a community, you can create those hybrid models that work pretty well. But let's face it, 4x4 didn't come into existence to be the best educational model, it came in to be the best disciplinary model. And that is in part the advantage of 4x4, is it less time in the halls. It was done for classroom management. It was done for discipline issues in a school. And there's some schools that need that. I mean, that is really an advantage in that school. I just don't think it is for everybody for all the reasons you eloquently articulated. And I think if you're going to make it work, you have to hybrid it. And I think that's what our principals in Cumberland try to do.
Thank you. Any more questions? With there being no questions, at this moment, we will end the education listening tour. I want to say thank you again for everyone coming out. I believe